Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about one of the bigger YouTubers on this site, one of the big news channels going by the name Philip DeFranco. Philip DeFranco has been around this site for a good long while, and his channel continues to grow and stay increasingly popular, probably for obvious reasons. I mean, besides him having a pretty good work ethic, him posting regularly and covering hot topics, specifically some news stuff and some YouTube internet related stuff. But in addition, Philip is obviously in with the higher ups here on the website in big tech. He's obviously on the right side of politics for them, or rather, we should say he's on the left side of politics. And that's one of the things that really makes it irritating for someone like me. He pretends to be this sort of centrist and acts like he's just giving out facts and giving things a straight, honest take. But in truth, he's like a fake centrist. Like a lot of these people online, a lot of YouTubers pretend to be in the middle when really they're on the left, sometimes even far left. But at the least, they're liberal people, they're Biden voters, they're people who hate Trump, they hate conservatives, they hate freedom, and in this case, they hate freedom of speech. That's what we're going to talk about today. And as you can see from this tweet, it'll give us a little taste of what we're in for. This tweet says, Monday's show is live. Let's talk about the fire hose of misinformation we've seen since Election Day, the new Pfizer vaccine, and much more. And then the picture is him making his usual kind of goofy face. And he also says YouTube is failing you, which to me implies heavily that he wants more censorship. You see how he throws out this word misinformation. This is one of those buzzwords that a lot of leftists and big tech will use. They call stuff misinformation that they don't like or agree with, and then that is a way and a process and a way for them to get it removed. They essentially want more censorship. They don't want people to have freedom of speech. They don't want you to be able to say what you want on the internet, on social media, or whatever it may be. You can't make your own videos with your own opinions, because if someone like Philip or another higher up dubs it misinformation, you're likely going to get silenced or even deleted off the internet. There's very likely situations where at least they'll remove your video or shadow ban it. The next step could be giving you a flag or even just removing your whole channel. I mean, even me talking about it too much here could get me into trouble. That's why I have to kind of walk on eggshells and talk about this as plainly and obviously as I can. And essentially the way I see it is this big YouTuber wants more censorship, and it's pretty obvious why. I mean, he doesn't like people that disagree with them. He doesn't want competition either. There's a lot of people in so-called alternative media, people in right-leaning media that are competing with Philip. So instead of trying to beat them in the battleground of ideas, instead of trying to prove their lies or their supposed misinformation wrong, he just wants it removed. He doesn't want it to come out there. He thinks that it's big tech's ruling to get rid of it. At least that's how I see it here. I mean, that's what's implied here. Again, I don't want to put words into anyone's mouth, and we're also going to check some of the video, but this is a strong implication that a lot of people have been reading into. Like, for example, here's Sean, a friend of the show. He says something interesting. He says, Democratic strategist DeFranco, 4 years of Russia and Trump teamed up to steal the 2016 election, no problem, doesn't undermine confidence in the election. Then, now, less than 4 days after the media calls the election for Biden, conservatives questioning the call, that's disinformation that YouTube must ban. You see, this is a very admittedly sarcastic approach. It's got a bit of a goof to it. Sean has a good sense of humor, but he makes strong points. I mean, the left spent the last 4 years pretending Russia helped Trump win the election. That wasn't disinformation. That was never proven, by the way. That was actually disproven, and we proved that there was no connection. There was no one that saw any evidence of collusion, but they talked about it for 4 years anyway. And now we're talking about the next election, and it's only been a few days. As of recording this video, it's still been less than a week, and people are still freaking out that some people aren't accepting the so-called Biden win. Now, you could take your stance on that either way, but I think waiting a few days for people to finish counting and to decide after some investigations and possibly settling some court cases, I think waiting for all the facts to come out is not some kind of crazy misinformation, conspiracy theorist thing. I think that's just being calm and coy and collected and waiting for it all to come out. But these guys think it's misinformation. They think it's lies, and they think anyone that goes against their narrative needs to get banned. That's the worst thing, banning everything. And I have a few other angles before we get to the video. The first thing I want to talk about is just the banning. I mean, you don't need to ban stuff. You don't need to remove stuff on the internet, even if it is a lie, even if it is so-called misinformation. I'm a purist. I say leave it out there if people aren't breaking the law. If it's not illegal, if they're not hurting anyone physically, then it should be allowed. If you're not getting getting arrested or going to jail, then you can post stuff on the internet, even if it's something people don't like, even if it's something that might not be true. I don't like people that lie on the internet, but there's no law that says you can't lie. There's no amendment in the Constitution that says lying in public is a major crime. Now, there are some versions of that. There is the kind of screaming fire in a movie theater. That can be actually a crime because you're endangering people, but posting something on YouTube, writing a post on Twitter, it's not the same thing at all. So the point is, banning stuff is totally unnecessary. It's only something weak people do that just don't like freedom and freedom of speech, and they don't want to argue against it like Philip, which, by the way, he makes these goofy faces in all his thumbnails. I guess that's what works for him. I guess that's a great move for him, but it's really cringe to me. Like every time he's making some weird face in the thumbnails, I can't stand that stuff, but that's besides the point. The next thing I want to point out is something this reminds me of. It's something I actually saw on Fox News earlier today. I was in a waiting room. I was at an appointment in the waiting room. Fox News was on. I normally wouldn't watch that crap anymore because they totally went anti-Trump during this election. But the point is, Fox News came on. Amy Klobuchar was on Fox News saying some really crazy stuff that this really reminds me of, because they were having this hearing and they were asking this McCabe guy about Russia collusion from 2016. And at the same time, they were also asking him why people are questioning Biden's win in 2020. And it was really strange. It was this really strange juxtaposition, which is basically what Sean spells out here, because Democrats are just so hypocritical. They can't even get this right. It's so crazy because they questioned the 2016 election forever. They still question it. They still pretend Russia colluded and cheated or something. They don't have any proof, but they question it for 4 years nonstop. They still will question it. But for some reason, after 4 days, we can't even question the call for 2020, even though there's still states counting, there's lawsuits, there's all kinds of court cases. There's been lots of evidence of fraud too, but votes that have been thrown out, people that have testified and said that the mailing places, the post office has been backdating stuff. Dates have been changed in some states and moved. The deadlines have been changed illegally. Lots of evidence out there, but we can't even talk about it. We're going to get deleted for mentioning it. Disinformation is what they call it, apparently. And it's just so ridiculous because, again, back to what I saw in the news, like Amy Klobuchar was holding both those thoughts at the same time. And that's some real strong cognitive dissonance. She was going back to 2016 saying, we got this indication that Trump and Russia colluded, blah, blah, blah. That still was an issue. And then at the same time, she was like, but Biden, there's no questioning this. Anyone that questions this is crazy. And I just couldn't believe that kind of mental gymnastics can happen at such a high level in such a public space. But that appears to be what's happening with a lot of leftists, including politicians like Klobuchar and including YouTubers like Philip DeFranco. So with that said, without further ado, let's check some of this video and see what the man, the myth, the legend has to say for himself. This guy is a millionaire YouTuber who's made lots of money, lots of success. He's had YouTube on his side the whole time. So I find it very interesting that he's now happily going to get people banned and take away opportunities and voices to other people. It's like, oh yeah, of course you think that because everything's been easy for you. YouTube has been just coddling you and promoting you nonstop. But once someone says something you disagree with, you want to ban them.
Right, headed into this election, there was a ton of pressure on large social media platforms to stop the spread of misinformation, largely, and I think rightly, because of the role many of those companies had in allowing false information to spread like wildfire during the 2016 election and after. And now more recently, they had their work cut out for them. And of course, notably, we've talked about a lot of the large platforms responding to this, putting in new policies and rules ahead of the election. But also, despite those measures, you still had a lot of people finding a lot of issues with how they were dealing with the situation. Well, the focus...
Okay, so he's clearly for big tech manipulating their platforms. He's not for an open, free space where people can say what they want, people can discuss things, people can bring up issues, tough issues, hard issues, question things. That's not the kind of internet space that big tech is hoping for, or clearly Philip DeFranco is supporting. He doesn't want open discussion. He thinks so-called misinformation is something that should be removed. And the question you got to ask is, what even is misinformation? I mean, it's kind of becoming this sort of weirdable buzzword. I don't even know what it means anymore. I'm going to Google it. Misinformation is false or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. So this isn't a crime. This isn't something people can get into jail for. I believe there might be some laws, like if you lie about a product that you're selling, you might get fined for that. Or if you're in the medical field and you promise results off of a pill and it doesn't work right, like you'll get in trouble. Like there's some some cases, but just people talking on Twitter or YouTube, people having discussions in the news, in the media, having a Twitter post, a video on YouTube, that doesn't fall into that space. And the truth is, this misinformation buzzword is just something they use. It's like their weasel word, because anything they don't like can be deemed misinformation. Who's judging what's misinformation? There's no arbiter of truth here. There's no fair and balanced middleman deciding which side is saying which on misinformation. That's the problem, is big tech and these companies like Facebook and Twitter, they're run by leftists. They're run by radical left-wing liberals who donate to Democrats. Half of Facebook's staff is former Obama staffers. I mean, Twitter, Jack Dorsey dresses up like a feminist bum. He has a nose ring. I mean, these guys are far left, and they're the ones that are supposed to judge what's proper information, what they agree is allowed to get out there. And I just don't trust that. I don't believe in that. I think we should just all be able to say what we want. I think no one needs to be banned off the internet. If you're not in jail, you should be able to have an account and be able to post stuff. If you post something illegal, get the authorities involved, call a cop, get them fined or whatever charges you have to file. But as far as having big tech being this judge, jury, and executioner, them, the arbiters of truth, it's like, no way. We cannot trust them. They're proven themselves to be biased. In fact, anything they say is misinformation is just people that question their narratives and don't go along with their lies. We've seen them lie before. We've caught them making stuff up. And that's why it's just so strange and so odd for like an alt media star like YouTube's Philip DeFranco here. He's this big alternative media star who, now that he's gotten famous, he wants to delete other people's accounts that question him or maybe even challenge him. I don't know what's going to happen with me here. This could definitely come back to bite us, but I feel like this is a story that needs to be told. We have to talk about it and step up and fight the good fight. So that's my piece. That's what I have to say. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Hit the reply button. Tell me what you think about DeFranco, about this censorship, this pro-censorship wave, about how big tech is supposed to be this like judge and jury when really they're biased against us and using their powers to help their own causes and to hurt other people. So tell me what you think. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button too. And until next time, have a good one.